morning, Chair Breen and members of the subcommittee. As indicated, my name is Cindy Brown. I'm the section leader of the trafficking unit at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. We handle the prosecution of drug and human trafficking cases.
Good morning. My name is Brian Martin. I was a detective with the Auburn Hills Police Department. I retired in February and took a job as an investigator with the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. But detective, investigator, or you is fine.
So I would like to, I don't want to take any more of your time reiterating what has already been said to you, but I would like to highlight a couple of things. First of all, as it relates to Senate Bill 515, which was Brian Martin's suggestion to amend MCL 76827C to allow hearsay statements in human trafficking cases. I want to give you the case, actually, that was the catalyst for that so you understand how it could be utilized. Detective Martin and I had a case in which there were 2 defendants charged with human trafficking out of Auburn Hills. We had 3 victims. One was in custody in the Oakland County Jail on a parole hold. One was in the Wayne County Jail on a probation violation. And one was held at Southfield Police Department on a warrant pending our preliminary exam. The exam got set, as they usually do, within a very quick time frame because the traffickers think these victims are not going to show up for court. And they usually are right. So in this particular case, we had a preliminary exam, and I believe it was within 10 days. It was in front of Judge Nicholson in Rochester, and we had to go to 3 different locations to bring our victims to court. The one that was from Southfield PD and the one from from the Wayne County Jail were extremely ill. They were experiencing significant withdrawals from the drugs to which they were addicted. We had to put them on the witness stand in court and testify in that condition because we didn't have an alternative. One of the victims testified that she had dated the trafficker for approximately 7 years. So we had a dating relationship there, which kind of turned it into a domestic violence situation that allowed us to bring in her statements only to law enforcement at the preliminary exam. The other 2 women, we couldn't do that. Now, the 76827C statute does allow for hearsay statements to be brought in at preliminary exam. You do not have to produce the witness because there's no right to confrontation at the preliminary exam. It only applies at trial. So when the cases go to trial, we have a different situation where we will need to produce the victims in order to bring in that hearsay testimony. But typically, in my experience doing human trafficking cases for about 4 years now, we have a much better shot at getting the victims to the trial because time has lapsed. Typically, I'm thinking of a couple cases in my head as I'm talking to you about this, where the word gets out that the trafficker is in custody and we have more people who come forward. The case gets stronger. We get search warrants back from Facebook and cell phone downloads. So there are alternative ways that we can prove cases, and if the case gets bound over from district court to circuit court, oftentimes the trafficker's going, oh boy, right? Because they thought it was going to be dismissed up front when the victim doesn't appear. So the change to MCL 76827C to allow for human trafficking, for it to be utilized in human trafficking cases would be transformative. I don't know what other word to use. I'm so appreciative that Detective Martin, who was the detective on the case I just discussed, recognized that and pursued it because I echo the sentiments from the AG's office about the importance of it and what a difference it will make in our ability to hold the traffickers accountable. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add on that Senate bill, Brian?
I can just say that because that was my case, I was the officer in charge of that case. The fact that I had to hold these victims of human trafficking, knowing the situation that they were rescued from, that we had to hold them in custody and then take them while they were still sick and they should have been in the hospital and put them on the stand in front of their trafficker in order for us to get those statements in was heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. That's when I went to Cindy and I said, why can we not have the first trafficking victim not testify? How come I can say what she told me on scene that day, but these other 2 poor women have to get on the stand while they're shaking and sick and recount this? How come I just can't do that? And she said 27C does not allow for it because there's no domestic relationship with those 2 victims. And I said, that's ridiculous. And she said, well, the law needs to be changed. And so as a police officer, we normally think the law just can't be changed, but I researched it. I was able to get with Senator Bayer. We made those changes, and I can tell you that this would be life-changing, not only for the victims, but for the officers and the detectives that work these cases, to be able to get up on the stand and say, this is what these victims told me when we got them out of this horrific situation. This isn't every statement they tell us, and it's when they give us these statements, we still backstop these statements with evidence the way we do any other statements. But the fact that I would be able to have those victims in rehabilitation in a hospital setting and not on a stand within 2 weeks of rescuing them from their situation would be game-changing. So I really hope that you're in support of this law, because it will really help not only the victims but law enforcement in these cases.